Hello， 大家好，我是 Amy， 欢迎来到 Stella 和 Amy 的自定义 Podcast。
大家好，我是 Stella。大家应该也发现我们的播客有了一个新名字，现在叫做 StellaxAmy 自定义。
这是我们改名后的第一期。这一期我们已经期待很久，比较特别，因为是用英文录的，所以和之前的中文内容会有点不一样。希望大家喜欢。English starts around 5-minute mark. Feel free to just jump ahead.
这也是时长特别长的一期。我们录制的时候花了将近3个小时，最后剪辑完的这一期内容也有2个小时。我们现在改成双周更新了，虽然更新会间隔久一点，但是内容还是很丰富。我们也看到在不同的平台上有些朋友给我们留言说上周没有更新，有一些不习惯，希望这周的分量可以让你们满意。
对，这周有加大分量。我们会继续好好陪伴大家，用新的这个 StellaxAmy 自定义 Podcast。 那就让我们一起进入这期特别的英文节目吧。
今天这个新朋友非常特别，今天我也是早上6点钟起来录播客。一般我们早上起这么早的话，就说明我们的嘉宾是人在亚洲，
通常在中国，因为比较忙。
对，但是今天这位朋友呢，还和我们以往的人在中国的嘉宾不太一样。今天的嘉宾叫 Josh 跟大家打个招呼吧。
你好，我的名字是 Josh。
人在中国，但是 Josh 是一个美国人。我们最早是在 Threads 上刷到 Josh， 然后当时看到 Josh 在 Threads 的简介里面有提到自己的经历，他是在芝加哥出生长大，大学去了 MIT， 在 MIT 之后呢，又去了北京清华的苏世民书院读研究生，然后在那之后呢，又在深圳工作和创业，非常有趣的经历，所以我们也终于请来 Josh 到我们的 podcast 上来跟我们聊聊天。
我第一次听 Stella 讲的时候还不太确定苏世民学院是什么，两个清华的要不要介绍一下什么是苏世民学院？
苏世民书院是在我从清华毕业之后建立的一个学院，其实我并不很清楚苏世民书院的具体情况，但是在我毕业之后再回到清华的时候就发现，怎么以前大家去洗澡的那个澡堂变成了一个特别气派的一个建筑。以前的同学就告诉我说这个是苏世民书院。Josh 要不要补充说明一下这个苏世民书院到底是一个什么学院？
苏世民学院是这样子，这个房地产投资的公司叫 Blackstone， 他们的董事长就叫 Steve Swarzman， 然后他的想法就是这个中美关系永远是很重要的2个国家的关系，所以为了保持这样的紧密的关系，他创造这个学院。所以这个苏世民学院就是一个奖学金，所以如果你大学毕业之后，你就可以开始申请参与这个活动。每一年这个学院我们会邀请大概125个非常厉害的学生过来中国学习，然后他们会收到一个补贴，会收到这个奖学金，然后就是1年的硕士在清华，你可以学习各种各样的话题所以可以学习历史、经济，可以学习这个国际关系的，有好多项目的，然后有好多很有名的教授会过来给我们这些很有意思的讲座，或者安排我们的课程这样子所以非常有趣，就是一边就是一个 MBA 的感觉，因为这些苏世民的学生会一起出差，一直去别的国家探索，一边也是一个比较专业的项目，因为你到时候也需要写一个论文，然后你的论文被认可之后你才可以毕业，所以很有意思的项目。
它是完全免费的吗？125个人都不用付钱吗？
完全免费。
但是想要进入这个125个人的名单应该是很难的。
非常难，我听说今年这个 acceptance rate 是3%、2%，确实很低，
但还是要比中国高考的录取率高。
对，确实。
大家也能听出来 Josh 的中文非常厉害。我们之前在计划录 podcast 的时候有在考虑说到底是用中文录呢还是用英文录， 但是因为这一期是我们来采访 Josh， 我们来跟 Josh 聊天，所以我们想了一下，还是决定用 Josh 最舒服的语言，用英语来录。所以呢，我们接下来可能有一部分的内容会用英语聊天。这个也是我们第一次用英文录 podcast， Amy 和我也很紧张。
对，现在放暑假的用英文录 podcast， 感觉又回去上班了。
对，对于我来说的话，就是早上6点其实还没有完全的调到英语频道，我们就看一看这个效果怎么样吧。我们就先铺垫一下，那我们也之后看一下这个我们第一次挑战英文 podcast 到底如何。Okay, let's get started.So Josh currently lives in Shenzhen. Did you go to Shenzhen right after graduating from Tsinghua?
Yes. So I graduated from Tsinghua in 2018. And, I was looking at different job opportunities, some in Shanghai, some in Shenzhen, different like big name companies, different startups. But I ended up picking Shenzhen and I'm picking a small product design firm. Well, because the other opportunities rejected me and also because I felt it would be a great opportunity for immersion in a real Chinese workplace.I knew if I moved to Shanghai, I would never learn Mandarin.
Oh,
you can get by without speaking Chinese in Shanghai.
Definitely. But I knew moving to Shenzhen, it's like very large challenge, My first job in China was the office place was 90% Chinese speakers only. So I was using Mandarin to try and execute projects, managing teams of engineers, talking to factories in Dongguan and Shenzhen. It was hard, but it was a great environment for learning, kind of pushing you to the next level.
So it's a small product design firm. What exactly does the firm do?
So they are an engineering service providing firm. So they help Western companies to build their consumer electronics in China and provide the engineering and supply chain resources to execute those projects. So in theory, if you had an idea, like you want to make a smart anything, a smart pen, a smart paper, whatever, you could just go to this firm with your idea and then they would help you execute from the idea to the research and development, the engineering teams, to the scale up of the production and then to mass manufacturing.
So it's not even like if I had a design I gave to this company for them to produce it for me. It's like if I only have an idea, I can give it to this company and they produce the product for me.
That was the vision. It didn't always work out that way, but that was the intention. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, what if a client comes to you with a wild idea, like not really feasible, right? But you had to do research to really understand the feasibility of the product.
For sure. We have the ability to reject clients, right? I mean, the leader of the company at the time didn't reject anyone ever. So we ended up working on things that I didn't necessarily like doing. I once made a set of automatic chopsticks for a YouTuber.
Automatic chopsticks?
Yes. So basically, when you take these pair of chopsticks and like bring them close to an item, there's call it a TOF, a time of flight sensor that will detect the distance of the chopsticks from the item and then automatically close them so you can pick up the item. I mean, it was, I don't know what else to say. I don't know.
For YouTubers, so it was just for recording YouTube videos?
Oh, no, he was trying to sell it to his audience. I don't know whatever happened with the project. Quite absurd. Yes.
My son is 4-year-old and he's learning to use chopsticks. I could see this could be helpful for him, but what was your role at this company?
So at this company, I was half mechanical engineer and half project manager. So as mechanical engineer, I was helping to design the internal architecture of an electronics product, right? So, you receive an iPhone, right? And it's nice. It's got that big screen and the buttons and a little charging port and the cameras, and it's nicely packaged. But there's a lot of intentional design that goes into deciding where does the battery go? How big will the battery be? How do the other PCBs connect to the battery? Where does the SIM card go? How do the cameras assemble into the device, right? So that's all kind of mechanical engineering applied to the design of the internals of an electronics product. So I was doing that half the time. And then the other half of the time, I was working as a project manager. So being the key point of interface between the Western clients and the team of Chinese engineers directly employed by the company and the factories that would be building the designs that we were producing.
We didn't mention it, but you came from a mechanical engineering background. You did mechanical engineering when you were in MIT. So that was also what led you into this type of job, right?
Yeah.
You also mentioned there was about like 90% of the employees at that company was non-Chinese speakers. Was there anyone else besides you that was not Chinese?
Yeah, 90% of them were Chinese speaking only.
Oh, right.
So 10% were non-Chinese. So yeah, like we had employees, 同事, coworkers from Turkey, from France, Britain. The big boss was German. It was quite diverse. Not very many Americans. I was the only American, actually.
Okay. So the owner is also not a Chinese.
Right.
I see. Your role is very special in like Chinese manufacturing business because I think a lot of times they needed a person who can speak fluent English and understand what the Westerns want and also communicate with the factory side. And most of the time I see that person, they will be American-born Chinese. They will be ABCs coming back to China to work. But you are special in that you are American. Yeah. And never lived in China before that. Yeah.
Pretty weird.
Yeah.
So how did it work? Like with a company with coworkers or employees with various cultural backgrounds? So you are from the US. So were you the one mainly working with US clients? And like, for example, like your Turkish coworker mostly work with clients from Turkey. Is that how it's arranged or?
No, I mean, we would take projects wherever they'd come from. A lot of the projects were coming from United States and Europe. The idea was that because I was American, spoke fluent English, because I'm basically competent, like I could help to, understand and translate whatever the client is requesting for the engineering teams and the factories that would be downstream. Yeah, it was a great learning experience, really getting to see firsthand hardware products are built. It's not as simple as putting together a 3-month plan for developing an iPhone app or something like that. There are just so many other complexities, moving parts, humans involved, and potential points of failure. Yeah, it was a great experience in that regard, really giving me a peak understanding of what this requires. It wasn't easy, though, as the cross-cultural bridge, right? I am American and I am definitely not Chinese. So like when it comes to understanding how to best collaborate with my Chinese peers, that took a lot of time. I remember there was one point in time where we're working on this project. I believe it was a touchscreen device for a Western client. And I had just given this engineer a lot of points of feedback. We were talking about how we want this touchscreen to fit into this entire product, right? So you've got the touchscreen, you've got a speaker, you've got a microphone, you've got an NFC reader, which like allows you to read touch cards. And then you've got like a computer sitting at the base of it. So it kind of looks like an iPad with a keyboard. So you've got this device that we're building. The clients, their goal is to make it look like an Apple product. So that's what everyone wants from their products forever. Everyone wants everything to look like Apple. So the initial design of this device, right? We're using screws to assemble the back of the device and the front of the device together. Mm-hmm. The client wants to reduce the space. He wants to reduce the edges of this device to get it more thin. He wants the screen to basically touch the edge of the device like an Apple product. But to do that, we can't use screws anymore. Screws will no longer fit in that amount of space. So now we have to start thinking of, are we gluing this product together? Are we using some type of clamp system, right? So there'd be this type of situation where the client have these lofty ideas, bold requests, and it's my job to try to translate it to the engineer and also kind of convince them that it's a good idea. So I'm just like in this instance, right? I'm talking to the engineer and I'm just like, 好，所以现在是这样子，客户说他们现在不要这个螺丝钉，这个螺丝钉的位置我们得想掉吧。
太占位置了。
对，我们都可以用一个卡扣的方法来固定这个后面跟前面的零件，我们用这样的方法，然后这个工程师非常不满意，他就觉得这个基本上没有什么道理，因为你到时候需要组装产品的话，如果你需要拆的话，你可能可以一次性组装，然后拆的话就这个后面的零件就不能用了，需要扔掉了。所以 we'd have these types of conversations, and I'm trying my best to be reasonable and understand what the engineer is saying. And the engineer, like his emotional response, I'm not able to interpret correctly. I'm just like, is he angry at me now because I've given him this request? Because, and my Mandarin wasn't good enough and he was speaking quickly and it gets confusing. So I think in moments like that, it was challenging. I remember that day I ended up just writing like an apology to the engineer over WeChat message. Like, hey, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know if you're mad at me, but I was, I'm just trying to make this the best product I can. I don't know what's going on. Just trying to bring some humility and humanness to the whole thing.
I'm very curious. How did they respond to your WeChat message, your apology?
Oh, he was like, oh, there's no problem at all. Yeah, see you tomorrow. Just like, yeah, it's fine. Everything's fine. And I'm like, okay, cool.
But this is the dynamic that I often see, like the brand side or the US customer would demand, let's just do that. And they don't care how you're going to achieve that. But on the factory side, they know how much work it takes to achieve something that's totally different. And being the person sitting in between, you kind of want to achieve what the American customer wants, but also see the difficulty and the 成本 and the cost to achieve that. So which side do you lean more at the end?
I think today my job, I believe the role of the project manager to do your job effectively is not only to advocate for the interests of one party over the other, it's to manage everybody's expectations. Like, you're asking me for this thing, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to tell my team to do that. The engineer, on the other hand, maybe he's got a type of, I don't know, what type of feedback would the engineer give? Because the clients will always give unreasonable requests that, that are not based in the reality of how products are made and designed and assembled and injection molded and formed, right? So it's my job to interpret that and to understand that it's unreasonable before it gets to the engineer. But then on the engineer side, as an engineer, they have this high expectation of having a complete and full picture of the parameters. What are the constraints? They want to know every piece of information before they begin to work in a direction. But in these types of situations, I have to talk to an engineer and be like, look, we don't have all the information now, but with what we do have, I know you can do this part of the project now. So just do that. Being in the middle and just trying to drive everybody, knowing what their incentives are, what they're trying to do, and what they can actually do. I think that's the best way to put it.
When we work in tech, product managers will come with their big wish list. Like they have this grand vision and there's so many things they want to do. But when they bring that idea to the engineering team, they also come with an expectation that they will get pushbacks. For your Western clients, when they give you the product idea, did you get a sense that they also expected some pushbacks, or were they like, this is my idea, I want it this way?
No, I mean, the revenue model is the clients paying us to build their products, right? So as best as we could, we would try to fulfill all of their requests. But sometimes it made for some unreasonable engineering changes. I remember there was a project where there was this French company designing a kind of a digital board game, a touchscreen tabletop board game. The product itself, the software was incredible, but the hardware, the internal design of this product was truly terrible. Like no one spent the time to optimize this for mass manufacturing. It's one thing to be able to build a product together, 1 unit, 2 units, have a very rough design and have something that you can showcase to somebody at CES or something. It's another thing to have the product that's designed for being done repeatably, reliably in assembly and production, like at scale. These are 2 entirely different approaches to building a product. And they just wanted us to use the prototype approach for building hundreds of units. And it was a point of frustration. But again, in that case, it's like, I know as an engineer, your internal architecture of this project is terrible, but you're paying us and I'm being paid to do what you tell me to do. So I will tell you it's terrible and then go and try to convince the engineers to do it.
Do you think that's one of the strengths of Chinese factory and manufacturer? They don't usually push back.
I would disagree on that point.
Oh, because they push back on you?
Yes. I think, sure. So maybe there are different stages of the engagement with a manufacturer, right? There's the initial engagement, right? Where the manufacturer is, excited for more business, trying to lock you down as a customer, making guarantees that they may or may not be able to fulfill. And you want to build an iPhone that's half the size of an iPhone. And they're going to be like, yes. But then when you actually sign the contract, you start building, then the manufacturer will start giving you interesting points of feedback. Like, oh, hey.
I just realized.
Yeah, I just realized, we can't fit all of this technology into this small real estate. And, and then there'll be another, hey, I just realized, I thought we'd be able to finish this in 6 weeks, but it might take 12.
It's a very typical story.
Yeah. With my interactions with Chinese factories today, for these projects that we have for my entrepreneurship, the Chinese factories are very vocal. So I do think that they do know how to push back when it's important.
How long did you work at this design firm?
So I was at the design firm for 2 years. So that was from October 2019 to about May 2021.
What would you say, your biggest learnings from this experience from working at this firm? Did it match your expectations before joining this firm?
One of the things I valued the most was being able to see the full hardware product design cycle, unfolding again and again on different types of projects, definitely invaluable learning there. But for me, I also think I learned the importance of company culture or the lack thereof, because the company culture at this place, I don't wish to speak ill of companies, but it was a little cold. I remember my first week there, I'm just kind of feeling a little isolated and alone. There's no camaraderie amongst the employees who worked there. I would come to understand that things happened that destroyed that part of the company culture in its past. For me, that cemented the importance of creating, an environment where people feel empowered to speak up and collaborate and give feedback and grow together. Mm-hmm. Because I don't think that environment wasn't present at this company, in my opinion. People didn't want to take responsibility and accountability for when things went right, mostly when things went wrong. They didn't want to take accountability for that. Real story, we sent these touchscreens to our client, to their offices, and we sent them via freight, via boat, and they arrived in packaging that was water damaged and broken. So then when the touchscreens were opened, nothing was working. And the parts all bent, and the client is looking at us what is this shit? What are you guys doing over there? And no one's taking responsibility for any of it. The fact that we sent these fragile touchscreens over in a very thin wrap of styrofoam packaging, it's oh yeah, that was clearly going to be a problem, but no one's stepping up to address that, to try to take ownership on that. So I think great learning experience, learned the technical things for sure, but also the importance of the work culture, the environment you create for growth within the teams that you have to work with. Mm-hmm. Also, I learned a lot of Mandarin. There was a lot of Mandarin, a lot of texting factories in Dongguan. 这个交替，你们什么时候发我的货？哦，你说你要再延迟2天吗？你觉得这是合理的吗？这是合理的服务吗？So learned a lot of that as well.
Did you send 语音 or did you text?
Calls and text.
Calls and text and emails.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, making sure you get your message delivered.
Yes.
就是发语音讯息 is a very Chinese thing. That usually comes with a lot of emotion in the message. So I don't know if you mastered that during that period too.
I have not. So anytime I get a voice message from anybody, I never listen. I just click on a WeChat write as text button and I just read. I don't do voice messages.
Where did you go after the small product design firm?
So after that, I joined Apple June 2021, and I joined them as a R&D project manager for cameras. So for any Apple product with a camera, the Mac, the iPhone, the iPad, we were at the sites around Asia and working as project managers on site to ensure the timely delivery and, the timely delivery of these products in quantity and of good quality. So yeah, I mean, at that role, the KPI is shipping your product, your cameras on time and in good quality. And if anything interrupts your ability to do that, then it is your problem. So it could be related to the processes at the factory. It could be related to an emerging technical issue with the design itself. It could be related to literally factory human resources and just not allocating the right engineers to a project to ensure it's done in the right fashion. It could be logistics. I remember one issue we had where we needed material sent from the north of China to the south of China, like in a day, basically, right? But this factory chose like normal 3-day shipping time, right? And honestly, it's not that big of a deal. But at Apple, everything's a big deal. So this was a big deal. So now I have to be like, what is going on with you guys? Why you couldn't click the right button on Shunfeng? I have to play it up because it's Apple.
Does it help when you drop the Apple name on the phone? How could you have done this and you drop the Apple name?
People feel the pressure, right? So as project manager, I don't develop the supply chains myself. Right? There's other teams that do that full time. They already know they work for Apple. And generally in these types of arrangements, Apple becomes a very large contributor to that company's revenue naturally. But Apple also will frequently pits companies against each other, right? So at every step in the supply chain for the cameras and for everything else, there's always redundancies. There's going to be 2 factories that's doing everything. So if your factory isn't doing well, there's always a threat that your business will be pulled and given to another factory. So that is also something that they wield very strongly over their manufacturing partners.
Do you explicitly say that threat to the factory? The other factory, they are able to do this and that.
I think it depends on how angry the engineers are. But when they're angry, that may be said, yes.
As a project manager between the 2 companies, was it easier job to work at Apple? Because people take you more seriously, maybe.
People take you more seriously, but the stakes are bigger. So in context or for comparison, right, if I'm building, let's talk about the touchscreens. So we're building this touchscreen products. Maybe we do a run of 1,000. Maybe out of those 1,000, 3 of those touchscreens are absolutely not usable. There's some issue with the assembly and, they can't be shipped. So those 3 have to be rebuilt. So 3 out of 1,000. Now, when you apply that 0.3% to a company that produces as much as Apple does, that is hundreds of thousands of devices that cannot work that have been sent around the world. And that's the type of thing that would destroy a business. It's a matter of scale. And I think you kind of feel the pressure and responsibility. Maybe it's less complex because we get to focus on cameras instead of doing a lot of different projects, but the stakeholders are different and the amount of attention to detail that you're paying at every single step is different. Because again, these will be products that are sent by the millions on a yearly basis around the world. So 0.001% defects is still unacceptable. They really drive to try and control those things.
I have a tangent question. Do you get paid US salary or Chinese salary when you were at Apple?
It was a Chinese salary, sadly. No 401k, but I did get Apple stocks in a nice Western E-Trade account. So that was positive. But local pay.
How big is the Apple team in China?
I mean, across all of China for the R&D function, I think it's 3,000, 4,000, maybe. Anything Apple is huge, yes.
How big is the team in Shenzhen?
Maybe 1,000.
Between the job at the small design firm and Apple, which one did you enjoy more?
Definitely Apple.
Because it has more scale or because it was more organized?
Or better company culture?
All of the above. Yeah, I mean, the company culture, I really enjoyed that part of it. This isn't representative of all of Apple. It's only representative of Apple China. Apple Cupertino is extremely cutthroat, and I'd never want to work there. But Apple China there's like a large spirit of collaboration, working with your team to try to get the job done the best you all are capable of doing it. If there's something you don't understand, you feel very comfortable asking and learning from your teammates to be better at your job so that the entire team can do a better job at producing the final result. So I really like that culture. I believe this is like a part of the unspoken part of their company philosophy, because they make you go through 9 interviews, right? Like, you will go through 9 interviews to join Apple, which I think is absurd. But if you make it through those 9 interviews, you kind of have to be stupid to get fired. Like, you have to sell company secrets or like sell discounted products to others, or you just have to do something insane to get fired. But what that also means is that the culture of growth and development is strongly emphasized, right? So they want you to try your best, to take reasonable risks, to put your foot down and do what you believe is right for creating the best result. And if you mess up, then they want you to take that as a growth opportunity, and they will work with you to try to figure out how to do better the next time. So that was my experience. And I just thought that was like an incredible company work culture in Apple China. And that's something that I really respected about it.
Can you share one small details or something that amazed you about Apple's execution?
So this is something something that was explained to me during one of my first years at Apple. But, when we look at companies that make iPhones, if we focus on phones as vertical, we have Samsung, we have Huawei, and then we have Apple. For Huawei, they will generally give these CMs, these contract manufacturers. And a CM basically is a manufacturer who doesn't own any IP or rights to the products they produce. They only produce things on a contract basis on the behalf of other customers. CM. So Huawei will basically give these phone blueprints to CMs and tell them, make the thing, and then they'll make the thing, and then Huawei will sell it. Samsung will do something similar. They'll give the blueprint to the CM. Let the CM manage the execution, but maybe for special things like the phone display or the cameras, they will deploy additional resources to ensure that those things are controlled to a high degree of precision. For Apple, every single part of everything is controlled to a high degree of precision. Like, from the assembly of the camera to the subcomponents that go into the camera, there is going to be an Apple employee representative at every single point of that supply chain, ensuring it's done to Apple standard. And that's how they've driven such a high level of quality. So it was the meticulousness of their execution, I think, was incredible. But it also speaks to their insane resources that they can just afford to deploy people everywhere all the time to ensure that things are done correctly. And again, there's redundancy for everything, right? If one supplier wasn't doing well, they would play you against the other supplier, and a kind of cutthroat being a company that worked for Apple. I became friends with some people who were working at these CMs for Apple products. They went through a lot of stuff dealing with Apple employees.
Oh.
Apple employees can be very tough. I wasn't tough. I was chill because I was like 25. I'm like, I can't be yelling at you. You're like 15 years older than me. Like, that's ridiculous. But everyone else, they would be like, everyone's tough.
Wow.
I worked in traditional manufacturing a little bit before. And when the US client visits, we would treat them to dinners or many other activities. Apples don't do that, right?
It depends. Like, if the factory invites the entire Apple team out to dinner and it's approved by a company VP, then it's probably okay. But otherwise, it's viewed as bribery, and you shouldn't be doing that for individual Apple employees. They're really strict. Yeah.
VP level approval from Apple or VP level approval from the factory?
From Apple.
Okay, so that can take forever, I assume.
Basically, VP level approval is another way of saying don't do it.
So Apple was fascinating. How come you still decided to start your own company after how long did you work in Apple?
Yeah, so I worked in Apple from June 2021 up until April of this year, April 2025. It was a great experience. Again, the people you're working with, very smart people, all working towards a shared goal, great work culture. and really a large impact. Like I can forever say that like I had a part in creating the front and rear cameras for the iPhone 14, 15, 16, and 17. And that's super cool. But one of my best friends from the States put it this way. Apple is the kind of company that now grows down. It doesn't grow up. If we think of like a small startup, right? So you've got like the founder, you've got like an engineering department, marketing department, operating department. And like maybe in total, there's like 5 people. So 1 person per department, right? That's a small startup. So like if you're joining that startup at the moment, maybe that startup grows to become 100 people. And then you have the opportunity to become leadership in that department. You know, you can grow with the company, right? You can move up in rank with the company as it expands and becomes more successful. But Apple is one of the most successful tech companies in the world. So there is no growing up with it, right? There's not a very easy path to move up the organization, right? But what does happen is the organization will grow under you. Like Apple will continue to hire people, and those people can become your people who report directly to you. But the likelihood of you moving up in an organization is very low because everyone's receiving stocks that are being like disbursed on a 4-year basis, that are updated on a yearly basis. So you're strongly incentivized to not move so you can get all those stocks that you can possibly get. You've got management who's been at Apple for 15, 20 years who have no incentive at all to move as well. So when we think about like an ambitious young person trying to move fast and make their mark, like I didn't see the opportunity for me to do that at Apple. I felt like it would take 15 years to become a level comparable to the people who I had to report to. I'm not giving 15 years of my life to anyone. So I felt like I had a good run. 4 years is basically a degree. I got my degree at Apple. And, I wanted to try something different. Mm-hmm. I've been in China for 7 years. By 2025, my parents would be 70 years old. And I just knew I would need an opportunity that would let me have a little more mobility. And then that was another strike against Apple because working for Apple China, you're expected to be in Apple China 24/7. So kind of these were, I think, the biggest reasons. I'm just too ambitious for my own good. And my parents are old. So I'm like, okay, how do I find an opportunity that gives me more flexibility? I enjoy working in China. I've spent all this time working in Shenzhen, and Shenzhen's kind of grown on me. Like I didn't like it at first at all. I'm like, this is a jungle. It's hot between mosquitoes and cockroaches. I don't like the weather. I grew up in cold environments. It's not for me. But after 6 years, you can get used to anything. So Shenzhen's grown on me. I like working in China, but I also need something that got me closer to where I can visit my family at home. So I was looking at jobs online. They have all these different types of supply chain jobs where they may send you to China for periods of time to do X, Y, and Z. But after looking at a few, I was just thinking like, all of these jobs, yeah, I can go and work for somebody else. Am I using all of my skills to their full potential, right? I'm a pretty extroverted person, right? I feel like I can be friends with anyone, right? Which is an advantage when it comes to building relationships and driving business or whatever. I also have a creative side, playing violin, doing graphic design. I also like engineering and also like communication, also like learning languages. And I was just thinking like, there's not going to be a job that hits on all of these, but I could just make my own, maybe. And I can just do all of it. So I think around the time I was trying to think what would come next, I had taken this small project from a friend of a friend, just this girl who wanted to design her own custom humidifier. So she was like, the humidifier industry is like boring and stale. How can she create like a bespoke humidifier for like the Gen Z, like fashion, high-end industry? She basically agreed to pay me $800 a month to help her consult on how to make this humidifier. Mm-hmm. And for me, I'm just like, this is like a lot of money for me to do something that's so easy to me. Consulting on how to build a hardware product at this point is just like all I've ever done. That's all I know. So I'm just like, wow, if people will pay for this, maybe I can turn this into something. So from that experience, I started taking this entrepreneurship idea a little more seriously.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about the upside of starting your own business, but there gotta be some risks. What were the risks?
So here's the thing, right? Like if I was risk averse, I should never have come to China. Like I should not be here. It should not have happened if I was risk averse, right? When I just look back at the decisions I made over the last 7 years, like number one, after graduating Swordsman, which was a great program, I'm glad I did that. But after graduating, I could have gone home, gone to Silicon Valley, gone to New York, gone to Boston, But I didn't. I took a $25,000 a year salary to work in Shenzhen and get some very unique experiences for 2 years. And then there was another checkpoint. That was May 2020 when China was closing the border after COVID had erupted. And like they were just going to close it and not let people back in. I was hiding out in Hong Kong at the time. And I was like, I could go home, be with my family, sit this whole COVID thing out, see what happens. Or I could just go to China and just be crazy and see when China decides to open up again. And, you know, that took 3 years. 3 years later, and I think 2023, China finally decided that they could relax on the COVID policy. I think there were a lot of points for me to kind of pull out of during this China engineering, China manufacturing thing, but I always chose the crazier option because that's kind of my philosophy. I don't know how it started.
Okay.
I don't know where I got it from, but the philosophy basically is that if you are in your 20s, you have absolutely nothing to lose. You should be doing the craziest shit you can possibly be doing and gaining lots of experience and doing lots of things because you don't know where it's going to lead you, but you truly have nothing at stake. So I think that's been a guiding principle for me since coming to China and up until now. So when we talk about the risks of entrepreneurship, what do I have to lose? Like, I can say, if I fail, maybe I've lost a year or two, and I'll just say on a resume, I took a gap year, right? You know, maybe I've lost a year or two in potential income from working at like a fancier company in Silicon Valley. But like, I mean, we don't get wealthy by taking the same trodden path that everyone else takes, right? Like, you build your own wealth and your own value, your own value as a contributor. As a business person or as a person who creates things, you build your own value by having unique experiences that give you a differentiated set of skills and perspectives that you can leverage moving forward. All of that is to say, there is risks in entrepreneurship, but I don't care right now because I'm 29 years old.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you more about that because being an entrepreneur in China as a foreigner has another challenge, just logistically wise, paperwork, doing business with people is hard. Can you share more about that?
It's weird because I grew up in a poor neighborhood on the south side of Chicago, but because of all the things I've done in my life, I speak from a position of privilege. So my next caveat is that because I graduated from MIT and Tsinghua, I do think my experience as an expat in China is very different from everyone else. Now, that being said, I found the process of starting a company here to be quite straightforward and easy. I do think that Shenzhen, especially the Greater Bay Area, is trying to create more permissive policies for attracting foreign talent and doing entrepreneurship here. The city of Shenzhen, the Nanshan district itself, has like these stipends that are like worth hundreds of thousands of RMB for companies that are like AI related or robotics related or critical infrastructure related or like critical industry related. Like, they'll just give you money like from the government for starting your company in this district of Shenzhen. So I do think there's a strong push for attracting foreign talent now. So the process of me starting a company, I mean, I have to first identify where I'm going to rent the office space. Once you rent the office space, then you can start the process of applying to kind of have the 营业执照, like the official company document states you're a company. And then once you have that, you can start to apply for the bank account once you prove that you have an office and an actual company identity. And then once you have the bank account and once you have some transactions on the record, you can start to apply and sponsor your own work visa. So, I mean, for me, every step was painful because China's very bureaucratic, but not unreasonable. Just annoying, but doable. And of course, there are many foreigners. I've been here, 5-6 years already now, right? So I already have a network of people who've done this who can kind of help me through it as well.
Josh also mentioned a term, Greater Bay Area. Amy, have you heard of it before?
Yeah, but we should explain.
Yeah, Greater Bay Area or 大湾区 might not be that familiar to our audience from outside mainland China. So, Josh, do you want to give us a bit more read on Greater Bay Area as compared to Bay Area in the US?
The Greater Bay Area is a region of China that has 86 million people between Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Zhuhai, Hong Kong, and Macau. And Foshan and Dongguan. And it has a GDP that's higher than South Korea and Canada already. the idea is that by combining the regional expertise of these different cities, so Shenzhen and Dongguan being hardware manufacturing powerhouses, Macau being like a powerful tourist destination, Hong Kong being a powerful kind of financial center and attractor of foreign investment. The idea is that by combining all of these resources together, that China can create a local region that is competitive to the Bay Area is in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is that a good explanation?
Yeah.
Is it tech focused or is it any industry?
I can only speak for tech. I think it's tech focused, but like also Shein and Temu, or like in Guangzhou, a lot of the huge apparel companies are also operating in this region as well.
Yeah. I would say that area, that region has been famous for like anything manufacturing. But I think the current push is tech focused.
Yeah.
Can you describe what is it like to be an entrepreneur in that area right now? Because you know how Silicon Valley people like to brag about it's the best place to create business, be an entrepreneur, be an innovator. It's like the center of the universe. What is it like in the Greater Bay Area right now?
It's very hot and humid.
Do you feel like there's a community?
Being in the Greater Bay Area as an entrepreneur, I would say, I don't know how to answer this one. I mean, I like...
It's just China.
Yeah, it's China. Because I'm at the center of manufacturing for the world, I just feel like I'm at the frontier of a lot of emerging things, right? Like I visited robotics factories where they've got these touch-sensitive pads that have more touch force precision and detection than the actual human finger does, arguably. I've seen lots of these companies developing these like AI secretary pins, these small devices you can wear around your neck that'll record everything you're doing in a day and then give you a summary. Like I'm working on a project like that right now.
Oh.
I just feel like I'm on the frontier of where things are happening because I'm where the factories are. So I think that's how I contextualize my experience here, right? I'm here not because I like the weather, but because this is where the things are happening, where the things are built.
In terms of startup scene, in comparison to the Bay Area in the US, what are the differences? It sounds like the Greater Bay Area or Shenzhen focuses more on hardware. Is that the biggest difference between the two?
So I think cities in China all have like a regional expertise. So, like Beijing has several startup unicorn companies, like ByteDance is based out of Beijing, I think, and they have a few others that are like in AI space. Hangzhou has Alibaba and then DeepSeek now. Shenzhen has DJI and Tencent. I feel like there are different regional expertise for doing different types of things. I do think there's a higher concentration of companies that build hardware in Shenzhen, but that's not all Shenzhen is. There's definitely a lot of people with AI companies or, people working on blockchain technologies. I would say one of the biggest differences I can imagine is that the philosophy of venture capital and investment, waiting a while for potential return and accepting the fact that you may never see one, that is still, I believe, very American. From what I've heard, VC in China may not work the same. It may be more a form of a temporary, well, not VC per se, but a lot of lending for startups. It may just be giving you loans at 0 interest for a fixed period of time instead of just giving you money to be crazy, right?
Yeah.
So I do think that could have an impact on kind of entrepreneurship and the startup scene here. That's not to say that VC doesn't exist here, because I know those companies, but I just think it may not be as done the same way we'd expect it to be done in Silicon Valley and extensiveness as it's done in Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
Does it affect what's required of the founders? In the US, a lot of startups, the founders are required to tell a story, do a lot of marketing, and have a product idea, have a vision. But it sounds like in China, the VC atmosphere is very different. So maybe people are focusing on execution and delivery, actual business opportunity that has profit. Or what is it like?
I would argue like Silicon Valley takes a lot of stupid bets. It's the AI age now. So it's like I can put AI on anything and get $1 million right now. I'm looking at curtains right now in my room. Like I think if I made AI curtains, I think I can make a white paper for that and get $1 million.
I don't disagree.
China is, I can't say it's a recession. I can't speak accurately to the state of the economy, but it is not in a place where the Chinese elite are willing to throw money at AI curtains. I believe that can be said. I think you can argue that maybe they're more focused on founders that can execute. I would argue that maybe the capital market for VC investment just isn't alive right now. I still feel like it's reeling from all the previous housing bubble collapses, those economic issues, post-COVID economic issues. It's still kind of reeling from that. I was reading this article earlier about how they're offering some recent graduates of university salaries of 1,000 RMB per month to start at new companies. And 1,000 RMB per month will basically get you $2,000 by the end of the year. So, I mean, truly extremely unreasonable salaries for recent graduates. You know, the job market is just terrible right now for young Chinese people.
Yeah.
I think definitely has a big impact on who's willing to throw money at your crazy AI idea or your crazy tech idea.
There was a time several years ago when VCs in China were more willing to invest in crazy ideas. Like back then, started from that time, there was this term called PPT, 融资. Josh, if you've heard of that, it's like you have a product idea and you make a beautiful slide deck about it and you just go fundraising with it. Yeah, I think like coming out of that period now, VCs, and also because of the strategic direction changes from the administration, VCs are much more conservative now.
Yeah, definitely.
I think part of the reason is people do realize Chinese, after all, is not American. So.
Well said, Amy.
Both countries are unique in their own ways. There's no other country that is really like the US, and same for China.
For sure.
So Josh, for your company, are most of your clients from the US?
Yeah. I quit Apple April 2025 and I'm going full-time in my own company now. It's called Sparrows. And the vision of our company is that we really want to de-risk the process of engaging in China manufacturing for Western customers. So the driving philosophy is that India will not be able to replace China manufacturing, at least for the next decade. So in that time, you will still have foreign entrepreneurs, builders, creators coming to China to use existing and very strong and very competent manufacturing industry to create its products. But, you know, we still have a lot of existing and long-standing points of friction, right? There's differences in business culture, differences in language, obviously. We can talk about the culture and language. And then from those two things themselves, a lot of other issues can arise when it comes to driving a project to completion, communication of key timelines and deliverables, communication of expectations on what a product quality, finish, should look like. All of these things in combination can kill companies. In addition to the long-held belief that China is a copycat country and anything you build here will be stolen from you, right? So there's all of these factors that are in play that make China kind of a scary proposition for a company that is trying to build a lot of electronic hardware. But the truth also is that it's hard to do anything without China till this day, regardless of Trump's tariffs. That's kind of why I believe this company has a value proposition. Me and my team have worked and lived in China for a long time, and we kind of understand both cultures. Me and my co-founder grew up in the States, but worked out here, speak the language. For example, if you're a company that you want to make power bank, if you're a company that wants to make a power bank and maybe it's like a special power bank with like GPS tracking and like its own like Wi-Fi router, it's like an amazing power bank. This is what you want to do, right? So you can come to us and then we will help you identify who do we think are the best manufacturers in the China region who can help you build that product? Who has an existing expertise? And then we'll kind of do a little bit more digging into that company. So like all the certifications they say they have on the website, kind of ensuring that these things are actually legitimate. Like going to the factory and then visiting the manufacturer and looking at like their internal production processes, internal SOPs, quality control processes. the organizational structure. Like all of these things, in my opinion, can give you a pretty good idea if a company's legitimate or not. And then even more so, if a company's able to execute well for your project or not. So because we're here and have done this is kind of, I think, our biggest value proposition. But then on top of that, we'll help you with the project management, help you with the contract preparation and negotiation between the vendor and the customer, help you with the quality control. So kind of doing the final audits and checks before your product leaves the door, and then arrange the logistics so the product gets to the next destination.
Help us understand the space and the services that your company provide in comparison to that small design firm that you first worked at in Shenzhen. What are the differences? It sounds like that your startup does not really do design. Is that right? But like besides that, what are the differences between the two?
We don't do the actual engineering. That is correct. And that's just because I don't have money to pay a team of engineers. Like this is entirely bootstrapped, and that's not the direction I wanted to move in. And I do think that one of the biggest value adds that I can provide to a company in their design process is my understanding of China and my understanding of manufacturing, right? You can find hundreds of engineers, hundreds of thousands of engineers around the world, hundreds of thousands of designers around the world. But how many people can you find that can speak to Western culture and Chinese culture and help you bridge that gap, right?
In a software startup world, a lot of times you will want to focus on a vertical. Do you want to focus on any vertical, or is it whatever the customer want to make?
Our first product was feminine pads to Sierra Leone, then kitchenware for a Canadian company, power banks for a British company, a talking AI doll that we didn't finish for an Indian company. Ideally, our vertical is consumer electronics, medical devices. But honestly, if you pay me enough money, I'll do anything.
What's a typical profile of your client? Again, in comparison to your old company.
Generally, that's the case. We're not taking clients to just have an idea because that's way too much work. Ideally, the client has already created a first prototype of what they're trying to build, has already done some testing, generally know what the product should look like, and now they're trying to do the scale up. Mm-hmm. So in manufacturing, we call this stage, this is a stage after research and development, R&D. This stage is called NPI, new product introduction. Mm-hmm. So whereas R&D, the goal is to get you to a working prototype that's viable in terms of functionality and appearance, the goal NPI, new product introduction, is to get you from one prototype to 100 prototypes to 1,000 prototypes in a process that's stable and repeatable over a fixed period of time. So that's, identifying the right manufacturers, that's getting certifications in place, that's coming up with SOPs for doing quality control checks, for doing the assembly of the products, for the packaging of the products, and how that will be the logistics plan for how that will be distributed around the world. Yeah, it's good to have an engineering understanding, an engineering background to grasp what's happening. But a big part of that is also communication and project management.
I'm going to reference back to your old company again. So at your old company, from what I understood, it sounded like a client can build a product with that company, with that design firm, and they can also start NPI, the new product introduction or mass production, through that design firm. So my question is, I assume for many of the clients, they already have a design firm or a factory that they worked with in building the prototype. So what are the common drivers for them to search for new factories or new manufacturing partners when they enter the NPI, the new product introduction phase?
So these kind of companies, the products will be built in-house, right?
Oh, okay.
Getting to a prototype and then getting to a mass manufacturable product are two very different processes. These will be Western companies, American companies, European companies that have, they've done their own validation internally. They've created a basic PCB, they assembled it, they got it working, they've done the firmware, the software, they've got their MVP. They're ready to go. They know what they want.
Okay, so those companies or your clients usually have in-house prototyping capabilities.
Yes. To your question, you're asking what would drive them to come to us or drive them to come to China manufacturing. So the thing is, right, in America, right, we have plenty of engineers, plenty of design experts, but we no longer have manufacturing. We exported all of that in the sake of capitalism 40 years ago. So when it comes to doing things at scale, China is the big elephant in the room that cannot be avoided. again, regardless of how many tariffs you put on this country.
Mm-hmm.
I am literally working with clients to figure out how to either build their products in Latin America to avoid tariffs completely, or how to create contracts that reduces the declared cost of goods sold at the border to reduce their tariff obligation. Both of these are legal strategies, right? So you can't avoid China. The supply chain especially for electronics, the supply chain is so developed. The amount of local expertise, there's just so much of it. I had a friend who was thinking about starting a factory in America that would assemble solar panels. Absolutely can do that. I don't know if Trump still has subsidies for that. I don't remember, but that's aligned with our goals, one president or the other. Yeah, you build that factory in America, you hire American employees. Maybe the solar panels will be a little more expensive, and you'll probably be importing machines from abroad because we don't make anything in America anymore. Now, what happens when that machine breaks? Who's going to fix it? You don't know how to fix it. You're going to fly in the Chinese to fix it for you? Right? So we're still getting to the point where not only are we talking about supply chain, but we're talking about years and years of expertise that have been developed here that are missing in other regions to build products like this, to build and manage factories. So all of that is to say, when you're building a hardware product, you will be going through China. Anyone who's in hardware knows that, and it's not a surprise. It's just the people who aren't in hardware who are trying to tariff everything.
I assume there are also other companies of a similar kind in Shenzhen and in China. And your clients, your ideal clients are companies with in-house prototyping capabilities, which means those companies are not like individuals or small companies. So what is the competing edge that you have over other similar companies in the area?
Consulting is a game of building trust and then maintaining it over time.
Mm-hmm.
And I have fancy degrees and a fancy resume, so it's easy to believe that I can help you build a product. But also, for the American client, I sound like you. I look like somebody you know. So there's also that element of trust and additional willingness to believe that I will get versus a Chinese-looking person or even an ABC.
Yeah.
The world we live in is racist, right?
It
and
is.
like the fact that I am a Black dude in China who speaks Mandarin and saying I will represent you at the factory, given our current geopolitical context and climate, gives you a degree of comfort versus working with someone else. That's where we are. So I try to play that to my advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the optics. There's the fact that I present as American. My pedigree ostensibly says that I know how to build things. So I guess those are the big ones.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe there's the other element of, to me, is the most important, the element of having a physical presence on the ground. People think that they can just come to China and shake some hands, go out and drink tea with the bosses, and like that'll guarantee their product is built. And it rarely, if ever, works like that. So the fact that like I can be friendly foreign guy on the ground with my friendly foreign team on the ground, representing your interests, being paid by you to double check and ensure that things are done according to your standards. The fact that I can do that, provide that as a service, I think is differentiating.
Mm-hmm. All those questions was just my long-winded way of asking, how do you find your clients?
Honestly, a lot of it has been personal networks. The Swordsman Scholars Program itself the alumni network itself has been incredibly supportive in me building this company and driving it forward. More than half of my current clients have some relationship to a Swordsman Scholar, but I think the long-term strategy moving forward is to create a platform for myself where I can be a trusted voice for doing these types of international manufacturing projects on platforms like LinkedIn and Instagram, and then using that to drive a more natural lead generation moving forward. Long story short, a lot comes from college networks, MIT, Tsinghua.
Mm-hmm. So that is the demand side. What about the supply side? How do you find the best factories for your clients?
You sounded like it was easy for him.
Tell us, educate us how hard it is, Josh.
Let's use the example of this medical device company that is creating a device. They want to source the computer the SBC, basically the brains of this device that has the PCB and all the electronics, the cameras, the batteries. They want to source this in China. They're looking for the right partner who can build this product for them. To be very general, there are two types of partners you can identify. There are going to be OEMs, contract manufacturers or original equipment manufacturers who work on a contract basis to give you a custom solution according to your requirements. And then there are going to be factories that already work in your industry and work in something very parallel to what you're trying to create and have that native expertise. So these are kind of the two directions you can go in when we talk about finding the right factory. So for this client, first, our team will do like a market survey of like who are all the players who like have worked in making this type of medical device, right? And then we'll start having conversations with these different factories, these different players based out of China. And then in parallel, we'll also talk to these CMs, these custom solutions providers, and try to see, okay, which of you guys have the background, have experience doing a similar product like this previously? So then we'll come up with a list of like 20, and then we'll slowly try to refine that list down to the top 3 to 5, I believe, are the best fit for the client. So whenever we're engaging in something new, that's generally the process. It's like, you think you find a lead, eliminate. You think you find a lead, eliminate until you really get to who you think is the best fit for a client. Well, of course, there are existing relationships we have with custom factories, CMs, OEMs, where we're like, we think you guys are reliable. 非常靠谱的你们. We want to find a way to work with you guys long term. But more often than not, like, our goal is to represent the client's best interest, and it's not necessarily the client's best interest for us to just use the same factory we use for everybody, right? So that's why we really try to start the search over every time we engage in these types of things. You know, you can use Alibaba, like internal Alibaba. That's the easiest and most obvious start. You can look at customs records.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, like who's been exporting what product for what company abroad. And like that can be a nice hint at who's making what as well.
This is a tangent question. Is custom records in China public? Because like in the US, that records is public and we can buy like claimed data in the US. But is that readily available in China? How do you find the custom records?
There are certain platforms we can use to check which companies are exporting what. So I think the most commonly used Western platform is Import Yeti, where you basically can get a report for an individual American importer, like where they're importing from, like what factory is doing the export, like percentages, the HTS code, the harmonized tariff system. It's a system that decides how much tariff a product.
So that is the US custom data. If, let's say, if a Chinese company does not export to US and only exports to Europe, do we have that data?
I believe it's still an Import Yeti. So to be honest, like I don't actually do a lot of the searching myself anymore. We have a team for it. I believe that is still visible in Import Yeti.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Yeah. Asking because I worked with custom data before. I've been always wondering like if China has a similar database as what we have in the US. I'm very interested in this also because both Amy and I have a like data background, data from tech. So what you described, like the process of looking for the best factories is very similar to like curating your own database. Like you have a database of factories in China. For each factory, what are their strengths? What are they specialized in? Their production capacity, like et cetera, et cetera. It sounds like a very productionizable database to me.
You're saying if there are business opportunities in this?
Yeah.
Are you telling me to make an AI product?
Not AI. You can just be a database. You can just sell the data without, well, you can do AI if you want, but you can add this buzzword to your product. But the core of it is just a database.
I know what you mean. I believe... No, there are absolutely already existing Western-facing databases for finding manufacturers in China. And Alibaba itself is one of the biggest.
Right.
I don't think that's our value add.
Are you saying it's not hard to do this part and you have a team that just knows how to do it?
Oh, what I'm saying is that it's one thing to have a database of tens of thousands of manufacturers who you have no idea about their legitimacy and like their ability to execute the project. You don't even know if they're the real manufacturer or a middleman or a reseller. You can have a database that has all of these contacts, but you're trying to build a product, and can you afford to interact with each and one of these people to ensure that they're the right fit for what you're trying to build? Maybe not. So I think our value add is sifting through that data to get to kind of a more custom solution. Mm-hmm. I mean, a database would be cool. Like, we definitely want to keep records of all these companies we interact with, but...
As a data person, it sounds to me that although this type of data set or database exists, they're missing key information where they have inaccurate information that does not reflect the reality. And as of now, you still have to do this like human validation or human interaction to ensure that you are getting the information you need. You are getting the factories that you need.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a way of automating it, automating the validation. There's platforms like Tianyancha, where you can like look up the financial background of these companies, like their founders, their financial health, and etc. That can give you an indication. But I don't know. I feel like manufacturing itself is just a very human-intensive, communication-intensive process. I just feel like it's very hard to automate it. Just in the same way, it's just hard to gauge the legitimacy of a manufacturing operation without looking at that manufacturing operation. Surely data can help, but that's why it's just still a very human thing. Mm-hmm. Recently I've been trying to automate my entire life. I have an agent AI that helps me automatically generate proposals, invoices, reply to incoming leads on our websites, do research. Like, I've been automating a lot. But the one thing I cannot automate and may not ever be able to automate is the process of project management. I don't think it's there yet, or I haven't found it yet. But, it's the human touch. Like speaking Mandarin, right? Like, yes, you as a foreigner can go bring a translation device to a factory, have a conversation with that factory about the key things you want to talk about, find some mutual agreement and work. That could work. But the fact of knowing the language yourself, and through the process of knowing the language, having the cultural nuance to be able to engage with someone else, to understand what they like and don't like, to understand the pace and flow of a conversation, that human element brings something to the conversation that a robotic translation cannot. I think that's just as true when extrapolated to talking about the manufacturing industry itself.
We were talking about like your competing advantage. Do you find the information gap, the fact that all these are not so available to everybody, is part of your advantage?
Yeah. Yeah, I think definitely.
The reason I said that is because nowadays in the US, if you want to do any sales and marketing, there are so many databases that you can just pay a fee, and you have all the CTOs in the US is their email and the way to reach them. And whenever I use that kind of tool, I feel like, well, everybody can pay $69 and have this information. So what is my competing advantage here? And the fact that these manufacturers' information are not available as a database online you can pay for. You have to go through them and know the nuance about each of them. That will be what people actually want in your business.
Absolutely. But, in terms of like what we do as a young company, the finding the supplier is only one part of it, right? Because, after you identify them, there's the actual project management, the ongoing checkpoints with the vendors, going on site and like looking at the quality of the product, giving that feedback back to the client, helping them prepare contracts and, and trying to ensure their interests are protected, doing trademarking and IP and copywriting and patenting, and then the final logistics and like what are going to be the terms. Is it like DDP in terms of where the Incoterms? What are going to be the Incoterms for doing that final exchange? So is it DDP or is it one of the other ones? So there is a way perhaps to automate it, but the human touch, I think, is important.
AI cannot replace us yet.
Yeah.
This is also another thing I want to maybe discuss with you too. So in the US, when I work with founders or like business people, they want to gather all the information possible. For example, if I want to make a bottle, I want to know all the bottle suppliers out there. And then I'm going to rank them and I'm going to find the best one and make them compete. But from what Josh just described, the process sort of, it doesn't matter if you know all the people out there, but you want to know a few that are good and then develop a relationship with them. You don't have to know all of them, right?
Yeah, I'd agree. Founders have so many different sets of incentives that drive them. You know, there are some founders that are bootstrapping and are incentivized by saving as much money as possible to get to the best result.
The cheapest one.
Yeah, and, you know, not the ideal customer. I've had some bad experiences with these types of founders, but I can understand it. You're doing everything yourself. You're trying to get as far as you can, trying to get your first piece of revenue from what you're building. And then you have other founders that are incentivized by building something of quality, right? So they'll take their VC funding and then they're going to be meticulous in finding who's ever doing the best of the absolute best, driving towards building a relationship with these factories and then building with these factories. So yeah, founders have different motivations. You absolutely don't need to know everyone is building a bottle. You just need to know the ones who are meeting your qualifications.
I have a different angle, and Josh, you're an expert in this space, and I want to see your reaction to my interpretation of this. I sometimes think there are so many factories and manufacturers in China, and it's a highly competitive market on the supply side. And because of that, factories are not that unique. Or in other words, if two factories are in the same industry, they're producing similar items, usually like their cost and their price are relatively on par with each other. Is that also one of the reasons why you don't need to search for the entire space? And as long as you know some of the factories in that space, you feel comfortable that you will get a good product and a good price.
Generally, when we start off these projects to help scale people up is we sift through the factories for you. We're looking at 20 to 30 potential factories that can build a product for you. And we're trying to get you down to a list of 3 to 5 who we think are really, really, really good fits. That's a part of the many things we claim are our value propositions in this exchange. Now, when we talk about factories themselves and what differentiates them. So, okay, 2 factories make a t-shirt. One of them makes a t-shirt at $1 a piece. One makes a t-shirt at $1.10 a piece. What differentiates the factories outside of the price? A lot of things. A lot of things. Yeah. Right? So the first thing I'm inclined to talk about is the scale of the factory, right? Which just simply drives what they're motivated to do or not do. So we have this conversation a lot with founders, is that when you're engaging with a factory, maybe you shouldn't be talking to Foxconn, right? Maybe you're not at Foxconn level. Like Foxconn works with Google and Meta and Apple, Amazon. Maybe you need to find somebody smaller. There are these different scales of factories, different scales of operation. So maybe Foxconn, let's call Foxconn maybe at the top of kind of providing this type of CM service. But you have factories that aren't Foxconn that can provide a similar service, but maybe just don't have as many resources, right? And then you have factories that are even smaller than that. They're just very scrappy and like take projects on a case-by-case basis. So even like when these founders are looking at factories, at these 3 different scales I described, the largest, the middleman, and the smallest, they have very different sets of incentives. The smallest one is trying to survive. They will take damn near anything, and they will dedicate their team to try to get you the best possible result within their ability. The middle factory, they've got a certain expectation. They've established themselves a little bit. They've deployed a lot of capital already on their human resources, and they need to take on projects of a certain caliber to ensure that these resources aren't wasted. The biggest factories simply can't afford to be bothered with your project. They need minimum order quantities of millions and millions of units. So we're sifting through this information as we're meeting with a founder and recommending factories. We're sifting through this, looking at the background of the factory, of the products they've built before, looking at the certifications on a website, looking at the background of the founders, looking at the patents that these factories have themselves for their own technologies. I think that you can tell a lot about a factory from their quality control processes that they use for managing their own products. Going there and seeing like, are you doing 100% checks? Are you doing spot checks? What is your level of cleanliness? Are your workers wearing gloves when they work at the station? Do you have SOPs, standard operating procedures, labeled at your assembly stations, pasted on the walls of your assembly stations and of your quality check stations? From all of this, like, you can get a really firm sense of the level of quality, the professionalism, and the legitimacy of an operation of one factory versus the other. So back to your question about the $1 shirt versus the $1.10 shirt. There could be a lot going on in the background, makes those very different propositions.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a good answer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Josh, why did you come to China to study? Did you know Chinese before that?
So I was recently featured in a Business Insider article that talks about that.
Oh, send us the link.
I will send you the link. This China journey started for me in high school, actually, on my freshman year. We were asked to pick the language that we're going to study. I went to school in Chicago. I went to Michelle Obama's high school. They're pretty rigorous. They're proud of their alumni. And foreign language is mandatory. So I was looking at the option of Spanish, French, Japanese, Chinese, maybe a few others. But kind of looking at all of these options, I'm just like, nothing's really speaking to me. But like around the same time, a Hong Kong company bought a meaningful stake in the production company that makes the movie Inception. This is back in like 2010. And for me, that was happening while Obama was being like super positive on US-China relations, while America was espousing the miracle of China's economic development. And I'm just here like looking at everything like as a 14-year-old, like, I gotta learn Chinese, bro. Like this is the future, dude. Like they just bought Inception, bro. I gotta learn Chinese. So that's really where it all started, just from a very practical assessment of like what language will give me the biggest return on investment over the period of my life. That would be Chinese.
How many students from your cohort chose Chinese as their foreign language?
In high school, very few. So Mandarin isn't as much of an easier thing to engage in. But long story short, yeah, learning Mandarin was entirely from a practical standpoint of like, no matter what happens in the world, if I speak this language, probably be able to get a job somewhere. Mm-hmm. And then from there, did some studying in high school and kind of did a lot more studying in college.
Did you have any Chinese friends?
Did I? I had Filipino friends and Mexican friends and black and white friends. I guess I had Chinese friends on a math team and an orchestra team.
Very stereotypical.
But also I was on a math and orchestra team. So, I mean, I was in the right, I don't know. Yeah.
You're in the right crowd.
Yeah, in the right crowd.
Did you enjoy learning Chinese?
Yes.
That does not sound like a yes to me.
Was it more difficult than you thought?
I was forced to learn French when I was from age 9 to age 11 in grade school. I mean, it definitely was easier than Chinese. That is for sure. And I didn't even like learning French. I think the process of learning Chinese, I felt in high school was like, through learning a language, you're learning pieces of people's culture, you know. So there's kind of like the 客气, like the polite nature of Chinese language when speaking to strangers or people you don't know well, or people who like have a higher authority than you versus when you're speaking to your friends. And you're learning that the first few lessons of learning the language. Well, it's not ni hao, it's ning hao, right? You know, you add the little n at the end, which I hate doing. But, you know, there are ways of increasing formality. 对不起, like something goes wrong, 对不起. 对不起 is like very extreme to apologize to somebody on the street. No one says 对不起. That's what you're learning. If I do something extremely wrong, 对不起, 抱歉, 抱歉, 抱歉. But like if I just bump into somebody on the street, 不好意思, 不好意思, 不好意思. You know, like so from that formality, the language is a window into people's culture. So I found that part super fascinating. Even when I think about like the experience of Chinese speakers learning English, the one thing I notice is that you guys always mix up he and she, but in your language, it's the same sound.
Yeah.
So like it explains something else about that human's experience by learning their language, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. How was your Chinese after learning it for several years? How was your Chinese before coming to China?
Even after high school, and I'm sorry, high school teachers, I had to like start over like Chinese 101 in college.
Oh,
I think I just didn't apply myself hard enough in high school. But after 3 years of collegiate Chinese, now I'm at Swartzman College and now I'm living in Beijing. And honestly, everything was so hard. I even spent that summer like watching like Chinese language Netflix TV series and like reviewing like 2 to 3 hours of flashcards every day, just try to like build up a basic vocabulary of being able to converse. But then by the time you land, you're just like, everybody speaks so fast and they all have different accents. What is going on? How do I do this? It was really hard. A little frustrating, but I just felt like I have to keep going.
Yeah.
I remember being scared to pick up the phone when people would call. You'd order some Wai Mai, you order some dinner and have it sent to your dorm. The phone guy's going to call you at like 100 decibels,喂, you pick it up, 喂, 你好，我白菜菜放在门口，好吗？ That Beijing, whatever, our high-end, like whatever that is. And then I'm just like, just like scared, like just trying to get off the phone.
This is so interesting. Like Amy and I, us as Chinese immigrants in the US, Josh, your experience just like mirroring our experience in the US. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would be surprised. Like a lot of people who move to America they are finding it difficult to call customer service because they are scared to talk to the customer rep.
Yeah, I get it. I lived it. I was scared for years to pick up the phone. So my Chinese was not where I wanted it to be. If you spoke to me like a toddler, we could have a conversation. But otherwise, it was hard. That's kind of also why I moved to Shenzhen. I'm just like, you know what? It's not going to be enough. I know if I go back to the States, this Chinese thing is over. It's not going to stick around. So I just need to put in the time now while I'm young and can afford to do some crazy shit, stay in China, work on your language, get some unique experiences. To your point about your immigrant experience as kind of Chinese moving to the States, I have a lot more respect for that experience, for the experience of immigrants. It's not easy. You feel like you don't belong. You feel like people are going to judge you or look down on you for not being able to keep up with them. And in America, they actually do. In China, they're just like, you're cute. In America, they will judge you and look down on you. So it's really hard stuff. So I do think like, again, like that whole process of immersing yourself in another culture and like the lessons you learn about shared human experiences is just like, numerous.
This may be tangent. I think for our generation, we grew up in the age of globalization. And myself growing up, I believed that people can move freely around the world. As myself, I moved to the US and I grew up with the idea that like we will have people from other countries coming to China for visiting or living in China. That was the ideology that I grew up with, which is no longer true today. It was interesting, actually, a few weeks ago, on the flight, I sat next to a couple of farmers from Tennessee, and we started talking. And the husband, he asked me if I was from China, and I told him yes. And then we started chatting. And he asked, oh, is China really what they said it is in the news in the US? I was like, no, it's just people living their lives. And he was actually very shocked. So that made me think again, like, I don't know how long it is going to take us to go back to that globalization mindset again, but I definitely look forward to it.
Definitely. It frustrates me. Because I'm Black American, I intuitively understand the difference between what America tells itself it is and what it actually is. Because my life experience demonstrates the difference between the American dream that's promised to every immigrant and the real lives of people who grew up in very unfortunate situations in the country. So when we talk about the narratives that countries tell themselves, the narrative that China tells itself about itself, that America tells itself about itself, like I had unsubscribed from America's narrative by 14 years old.
When you were 14 years old?
Oh, yeah, I was done. I'm like, the American dream is bullshit. I wasn't feeling it at all. So it's part of the reason why I wanted to back up via learning Mandarin. I do really hope for the day where we can all kind of see each other as we are, as people and not as nationalities and different races and, different socioeconomic classes. That was one of the things I really enjoyed about the TikTok refugee crisis from earlier this year where all the TikTok people went to Xiaohongshu, went to Red Note. You're just seeing like this incredibly raw and unfiltered interaction of the 老百姓, the common folk of both countries, just like talking to each other like, wow, you guys eat that? You guys do that? You guys are normal. Wow. You know, and it's like, yeah, they're normal. We're all people. Like we're all, you know, so I thought that was so cool to see. So yeah, I do hope for a world where more people get the chance to leave their boundaries, to explore, to learn things outside of their own experiences.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us more about that? When you were 14, what kind of community were you living in Chicago?
I grew up in a pretty violent, poor community in Chicago on the South Side. I was kind of comfortable with my mortality by like age 7 or 8. There was always violence happening, you know, going to sleep to gunshots. Like all this was very normal. Sometimes just seeing puddles of blood on the street that are unexplained. Normal. Knowing how to handle yourself around certain types of people. In China, when people stare at me, like I have learned that it is a sign of curiosity. But growing up, being stared at for a long time is a sign of hostility. Like you're about to be jumped or robbed or killed. Like that's just what it is. That's how I grew up. When I was like 8 or 9, there would be times where I'm like, you know, taking like the bus to school. I'm just like, damn, if I died today, will mom be proud of me? Because I had good grades last week. I think she would. You know, it was just like normal. Like that was it. And again, to that point about the American dream, it's just like, that was my American life. These are very, very different things.
Were you the smartest kid in your crowd growing up? Like you mentioned you went to the high school, the same high school as Michelle Obama, I assume like a very prestigious high school, and then MIT and Schwarzman. Were you the smartest?
How could he answer that honest? It's a very tricky question.
Be honest with us, Josh. Were you the smartest?
I guess by objective measures, yes. But I would say I just had tiger parents. My mom had me playing violin at age 7. Didn't let me sleep over at my friends' houses, put a curfew on when I could play video games, made me take after-school classes for things I already got A's in. So I had tiger parents. And I think kind of their intentionalness and pushing me in a direction changed my life. My mom especially, she bought me a computer when I was 3 years old because she wanted me to be digitally literate. And like, that's not something that people would do. But for her, she's just like, throw all the things at him so that hopefully something sticks. Like she had me reading books by 2 to 3 years old. So I guess I am quote unquote intelligent, but it is just as much because of the intentional effort that my parents put in to create who I am today.
I assume that was not common in your community.
Definitely not. That's kind of the cycle of poverty that America pretends doesn't exist. If you're working 2 jobs to try to make ends meet to support a family of 3, you don't have time to be at home guiding your children on what to do and what not to do, driving them to these extracurricular programs, swim classes, violin classes, game design classes at Northwestern, math summer camps at UChicago. You don't have time for that. You're trying to survive. So that becomes kind of a repeating cycle when in the process of you trying to survive, these kids end up being in the street and not having the mentorship that would change their life outcomes and succumbing to joining gangs or doing violent things or becoming criminals and becoming a burden on society instead of being a contributor. So yes, there weren't a lot of families like mine growing up. They worked hard for what they had. My mom was always 1 to 2 paychecks away from us not being able to afford our lifestyles, kind of lower middle class. It's not like we had a lot, but they really made a lot of sacrifices to give me the best opportunities so I can do what I wanted.
Where did that come from? Because they don't have the environment. How come they think like that?
My mom had best friends who did very well for themselves, became professors at like universities in California. And kind of through her friends, through her network, she was learning these tips on how to like create smart kids. And they'd give her advice and then she just implemented 120% every time.
Did you grow up appreciating tiger parents? Were you at some...
No. I did not appreciate it at all. By the time I was in high school, I'm just like, Mom, leave me alone, man. I'm adult. I'm grown, Mom. I was so over it. But in retrospect, like, I owe everything I have to the sacrifices my parents made to get me where I am today.
Do you still have contacts with any of your childhood friends?
All of them, 80%.
Do they live, I assume they live a very different life from yours?
Yeah. Some of them have kids already, several kids. Some of them have never left Chicago. Some of them went to Princeton. It's really a very wide range. But the ones who did end up going to Princeton and Yale came from households of both families in a household with parents who were extremely intentional or had professional backgrounds and kind of knew the steps to take to create a successful human being.
Do you see more intentional parents in the African American community today? I guess my question is, the community have now a stronger awareness to break this vicious cycle of poverty?
Honestly, I don't know. Well, I think in the age of the internet, if nothing else, the people my age, the millennials and the Gen Z, my age and my community are more and more aware of what the opportunities are in the world and just what is possible. And I do think that is something that is different because kind of when I was growing up, our role models, or the only role models of Black people that I was shown, were Lil Wayne and Kobe Bryant and the drug dealers on the street, I guess. That was all we had. So I do think that this age is different because of the internet and because we can see the infinite possibilities existing in the world of manifesting who you want to be and then going out and getting it. I do think that is something different. But, I mean, poverty, it's expensive being poor, if that makes any sense. There's some statistic like the average Black family in Boston in 2018 is worth negative $19 because of the amount of debt that they've taken on to try to sustain their lifestyles or just make ends meet to get from day to day. I think the one thing that is poorly understood about the Black American community when compared against the immigrant community is this idea that we all started in the same place. When the American majority looks at the Chinese as the model minority or the hardworking Nigerian or Hispanic person, they will point at them and say, look at what they're able to do with nothing. Why can't you do it? And talking to the Black community. But what they don't acknowledge is, while it is true that immigrants start from zero, effectively, people in the Black community start kind of from a negative position. I'm not talking about the culture. I'm not talking about bad parenting. I'm talking about literally in the 1930s and 40s when like the FDIC was created and when the mortgage system was created to allow whites to be able to finance homes in the middle of the Great Depression. Blacks just weren't allowed to use that. Leading up to the 1950s and 60s, where now our communities weren't even allowed to interact with these banks, to take out loans, to even live in the same residence, in the same parts of the city as these other communities. Let's take an example. A Black family and a white family both have $50,000 in 1940, which is enough to buy a house. The white family will take out a mortgage, put down 20% on that house, move into a neighborhood, and they will see the value of that house increase over time. The Black family cannot take out a mortgage, does not have access to the same level of contracts as the white family, so they will need to pay 100% upfront through third party, through middlemen. It is often the case that if they miss one payment, then that middleman is entitled to take all of that money and take the house, and they're kicked out. And the value of their property does not increase over time. It decreases over time because they're pushing all of these Blacks into these neighborhoods and systematically devaluing their property values. So this was called redlining. By creating a system where Blacks living in your neighborhood devalues your neighborhood's property, you've created a vacuum of money in a very concentrated community. So after you do something like that, what do? You have people who can't afford to live, can't afford to eat, So what naturally comes when people are living on the edge of society?
Mm-hmm.
When people can't afford to live and eat, they steal. Violence happens, right? They find ways to survive. And then I think the cycle begins again where we talk about now the parents are working 2 9-to-5 jobs, can't afford to like be at home to take care of their families. The kids end up out on the street. And then I think that's where the cycle deepens and deepens. But like it has its core, not even in slavery. We're talking about the 1920s and 30s.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that just isn't well understood by people, which leads to them looking at people in my community like we're all lazy and stupid when it's just not the case, not a fair assessment, and not reflective of contemporary American history. Sorry for the tangent.
No, I love that. A few years ago, I saw, I think it was TikTok, African-American moms teaching their like 3, 4, or 5-year-old kids how to properly respond to policemen so that they don't get killed. That just break my heart as a mom of a 4-year-old.
Mm.
Yeah, I did that too. My parents taught me that the world was black and white, and like I sit on one side of the line, and that's never going to change. And I have to acknowledge that and accept that like I will be a second-class citizen in this country for as long as I'm alive and act accordingly. That's just well known. These are things just well known in our communities. Just like there are these set of, in the Black communities as well, it's well known that we don't like doctors and medicine. That's not because we're stupid, right? But it's because there's also this history of experimenting on Black bodies for the sake of advancing medicine for white people. Even, and we're talking about contemporary American history. We can look at the case of Henrietta Lacks. Basically from her body, they extracted these set of cancer cells that perfectly regenerated every time. So this would allow for like in-lab testing of medicines and kind of allows in-lab testing of medicine, which is already an incredible advance. But again, like they treated her as a cancer patient. She never saw any of the proceeds from research that was done on her. And like, she just ended up dying. We can look at like the Tuskegee experiments where they're like, I may need to check this one, but I believe they're injecting people with syphilis, I believe, as a way of just testing what that does on the human body. So a lot of things, again, that kind of people, immigrants, others look at our community and see, it's still very surface level and not reflective of the history of how we got to be that way, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Like even as model minority or model immigrants, oftentimes we also sense that we are second-class citizens in the US. But I guess in your world today, Josh, it's no longer only Black or white. You have like the Chinese component in it.
Yeah, the China component.
Yeah. You're now living in China. What does your ideal life look like for your future?
I enjoy being outside of America. I have such a clarity of mind as I live my day-to-day to not have to think about my personal safety from being robbed or killed by a criminal or from being killed by the police. From both of these angles, I no longer have to consider. I no longer have to be drowning in American politics every day. And that just gives me a lot of headspace to think about other things, to think about who I want to be, the types of impact I want to have on the world. We really value that. The lifestyle in China is extremely convenient and on an American salary, extremely cheap. And it's nice living in the world and meeting people from all over the world and seeing how we're so alike and seeing how we're so different. I think one of the funniest things is I personally do not like 内脏. I hate it.
What is that?
内脏.
内脏. Oh, okay.
But historically, Black Americans love 内脏. So Chinese will eat pig intestines, pig throat, feet, kidneys. All of these things were basically Black, what we call soul food, right? All of those things are a part of soul food. There's a component of that comes from like African-American slavery where the whites would eat the better parts of the animal and the Blacks were fed the worst parts of the animal. That then it became a type of cultural cuisine for us in our own culture. I just don't do it because I'm picky. It's interesting to see that overlap between what the Chinese consider a cultural heritage and tradition in the food they eat versus what we're doing over on the other side of the world with the same parts of the animals with a different set of ingredients. Like I think that's very fun.
So when I moved to the US, I went to UCLA and I met a lot of locals. Both of my roommates are locals and they came from not so rich neighborhood. And I started to feel that I feel immense possibilities, but when I talk to them, I see they have way more limits on themselves than me. They are like, oh, these are the jobs I can choose. These are the jobs I'm going to do. These are the neighborhoods I'm going to end up in. And I was very surprised because that's not the America I knew from the media. And it kind of aligns with what you just mentioned. When you grow up in neighborhood and for historical reasons, a lot of things are just not options for Americans. But for a fresh immigrant, like Stella and I, we actually feel immense possibilities, actually even more than Josh and a lot of Americans in less privileged communities in America.
And it's not to say like the immigrant is better than the person who grew up in America. It's not to say any of that, of course, but they're just very different situations. Like even like, just go back to the metaphor from before where we were discussing the Black family that mom works a 9 to 5, 2 9 to 5s, can't afford to raise her child, can't afford to be there as much as she should be for her child. Let's say that that child is uniquely gifted and then breaks out of his community and then goes to a good high school, goes to a good college. The first thing on that child's mind is, I have all these siblings back home that I need to be taken care of. My mom can no longer afford to do so. I need to be making money immediately in order to support my family so that we can all make it through, right? So you're not thinking about, oh, let me go do research at this laboratory. Let me go get the scholarship. You're thinking about what is the best way for me to get money now because I don't know how much longer my mom can work 2 jobs. She's 65 years old. And you know, that really weighs down on people when we talk about like being in their early 20s and doing the things I've done, right? Like, again, the fact that my parents made a sacrifice they made to put me in these situations is why I can be in China doing all the crazy shit I've been doing. I think that's the biggest reason. It's just my parents.
Would you say you're just crazier? You dare to do things that you wouldn't do in America because you're in China? Because it's a totally new environment and there's really no expectations and
no expectation and no limits.
No history.
I would say that because I generally believe that my parents will be okay, my family will be okay, I feel that there is no responsibility that I have to bear on my shoulder at this point in time. And because I feel that way, I'm a lot more comfortable with taking crazy risks like moving to China for 7 years instead of being in America and making money immediately. Because I know friends who have been given the same opportunity and had to go back home after college because there is a pressing responsibility. There's a child, there's a sibling that needs support. There's a parent that's in the hospital. There's things that need to be done and you can't afford to follow your dreams and to explore because life is happening and it's unfair, but that is the situation. So yes, I think it's the lack of responsibility that I feel I have on my shoulders that lets me do the crazy things I do. Yes.
You worked hard. Your parents worked hard. On top of that, you have been the lucky one to get you to where you are today.
Yeah.
Nice. Not to elaborate on my story, but I feel the same way. Just being away kind of gives you more room to do whatever you want. Did you think that our podcast will get to this point?
No, I truly did not.
Well, hopefully this episode is a good glimpse into the African American living in China and trying to be the bridge between the two countries, and also just from immigrant. I don't know if you call yourself an immigrant in China, but an immigrant's perspective in China. The other way around, it's the opposite side of Stella and I. The topic is kind of heavy now, but at the end, I want to recommend Josh's shorts. He's trying to be a trusted voice on the internet, and I enjoy watching his shorts. And he can tell you all about doing business in China with manufacturers and building products for the Westerner brands. And if you want to build any products, you can check out his shorts and get in contact with him.
Yeah, you can definitely tell Josh's past experience in music and graphic design in his shorts. So definitely go subscribe to Josh's accounts. Josh, what are your accounts?
So the Instagram account is Josh Sparrows, JASHSPARROWS. That's the Instagram. There's a Red Note account.
Yeah.
The Red Note account is my name my Chinese name, Wu Jiawei, Jashi, Jashy. I guess we can probably put these in the show notes.
Yeah. We'll put it in show notes.
Yeah, wow. I was not expecting to talk about this at all. I hope this was a good, interesting, and a productive conversation for you guys.
It's great. I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I want to end on something fun.
We had a lot of fun. We talked about manufacturing, yeah.
I'm like in a bad mood. Yeah. Can I tell an anecdote?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell anecdotes about extremely weird moments of either reverse culture shock or strange people in China. I'm going to tell 2 anecdotes.
Okay.
Anecdote 1. So this is reverse culture shock. So this is when I went back to the States back in 2023 after being in China for 3.5 years without seeing anybody, without leaving. I was in Chicago, I was hanging out with friends, and they're talking about like, we're about to go out to this club tonight. They're like asking, Josh, do you want to come to this club? I'm just like, And my friends are like, what? Did you just grunt at me? And I'm like, oh shit, that doesn't mean anything in English. So it's kind of funny. The other thing I've realized that going back home is like my sense of distance is different. Like my personal space bubble is different.
Yeah.
I remember like this one time I was walking into a store and, I was going to the AT&T store to replace my SIM card. I didn't have an American SIM card anymore, so I needed to do that. The attendant, he's behind the desk. And usually people, when they need something, they will just go up to the front of the desk, hand over their phone, and ask, and then get it done. Mm-hmm. But I walked around the desk and I stood right by the attendant and put my phone in his face. And I'm like, dude, can you help me? And my friend is looking at me like, dude, are you okay? And I'm like, oh.
I had the same kind of reverse culture shock, but in the reverse direction. Like now, whenever I visited China, when I'm on subway, when I'm walking the street, I'm like, you're getting too close.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, what is the second anecdote? Drop it.
So the second anecdote was, this was 2020, COVID era China. I was buying a phone from a Huawei store in Shazui, which is an urban village in Shenzhen. And just walking in the store, really nice attendant. He sees me. He's like, wow, it's a foreigner, all in Mandarin. It's like, oh, wow, 欢迎, 欢迎. 哎, 你是哪里人的呀? And I'm like, I'm American. And he's like, wow, 欢迎你, 欢迎你. 你需要什么就告诉我. I'm like, whatever you need, tell me. All right, he's being very friendly. He's starting to ask more personal questions. So he's like, wow, 所以你在中国做什么? I'm like, 我是一个工程师. He's like, wow, 好厉害. 然后你可以讲中文，可以打中文吗？可以打拼音吗？可以写字吗？哇，好厉害. And then like it takes a strange direction. It always goes this way. So it's like, 所以你有多少女朋友? I'm just here to work, bro. Like I don't have any. He's like, 这个好可怜了吧?
好可怜.
Yeah. And then what he said next, I forgot how he said it in Chinese, but what he said next was like, I need you to marry a Chinese woman and have her babies so that you can create the next generation of Olympians to save the Chinese Olympic team and give us more gold medals. And like, I was truly speechless. It's like, kind of eugenics, like black races has better genetic attributes than Asians. Like, what are we doing?
There are so many factors in this.
It was very confusing, but I look at it as a very fun and amusing story of cross-cultural interaction in China.
If you want like really fun, mindless racist jokes, you can have a lot in Asia. And it's to a point that you don't feel offended anymore.
Truly.
It's hard to feel offended at that point.
Yeah. Even today, I was walking through a market in Shenzhen, and like, I used to get so annoyed when people call me like Heiren or like Weigerin or Laowai or even call my hair Zhangbian, and it's because I'm just like, why do you have to point that out? Like, I'm just a person. We're just people. But I've come to acknowledge that like, there's just so few of people who look like me here. Like, I think in America, I would be justified in being like, shut up. But like, I'm not an American anymore. I don't know. I guess I just accept these things now. Even in this day and age, like I was telling a friend earlier today, I would much rather be a black person in Shenzhen than to be a Chinese national in America. I'd take this any day. I would take this any day.
Yeah.
I've had my bad experiences for sure. People not letting me in places because of how I look, or, people accusing me of stealing jobs because of how I look. I've had those experiences, but by and large, what I see the most is kindness and curiosity when I interact with people on the street. I'm grateful for that because it doesn't have to be this way. And I know in America, it wouldn't be at all. So yeah, it's a good life. It's good for now.
That's a wonderful ending note.
Yeah.
Thank you, Josh, for sharing your stories and your experience with us.
Thank you guys for listening and making me talk about things I haven't talked about in a very long time.
Hope Josh and everybody who's listening enjoy this episode. It's our first English episode, and we had a special and very entertaining and insightful guest. And if you like this, let us know, and we'll do more of this in the future. 那我可以讲中文，请大家关注我们的 podcast， 也订阅我们的英文电子报 The Cocoons。大家拜拜，
拜拜，
拜拜。
A very Chinese bye bye.
Yeah.